CBS News correspondent Nancy Cordes and Major Garrett are here with us at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. That is, of course, the site of tonight's vice presidential debate. Good to see you guys.
Great to be with you.
All right, so Major, this is a debate that is nothing to do with the one we saw last week, and yet these candidates, these vice presidential candidates, are going to be expected to press their opponents as surrogates. And so in that sense, do you give Senator Kaine the advantage here, given the stuff that we've seen in the last week?
Look, the debate is connected to last week's debate because it is either going to be a bridge for Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine to maintain the momentum from the first debate, or it's going to be Mike Pence's moment to sort of jostle that momentum and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm a credible vice presidential running mate. I'm running with a guy who's got a record that is important. He's a change agent. Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine are not. They are completely soaked in all of Washington politics, have been for a long time. So it does matter. It's only one vice presidential debate, but it is this go-between moment between 1 and 2. And most political science research tells us by the third presidential debate, most attitudes have been cemented. So between 1 and 2, this is an important moment. And Kaine and Pence have advocacy to take care of, plus defend allegations that are going to come at them. And I don't give either one of them necessarily an advantage. I would just say Pence's mission is slightly more challenging because he's got to reverse the momentum Hillary Clinton created for herself after the first debate.
Nancy, I went back and watched that George Allen debate that he did years ago, and boy, was he good. I mean, he is really good at debating.
Right, and he knows how to attack with a smile, so it never comes across as all that harsh, and that's kind of how he campaigns as well, even though he has been an attack dog for Hillary Clinton on the stump. He has gone after Donald Trump over his taxes, over the things he said about women, over his plans for a Muslim ban, and on and on. So he's kind of played this dual role for Hillary Clinton, and I think you'll see it again tonight. On one hand, yes, he's taking it to Donald Trump, and in this case, Mike Pence, on a number of issues. But on the other hand, he's there to kind of lend some sunniness to the ticket in what it has otherwise been a pretty grim election cycle. Part of the reason he was chosen is because she said flat out that she just liked him, liked being around him, and that's something that you hear often in the halls of Congress as well.
Pence has been preparing as well. This isn't like Donald Trump. What do we know about his debate prep?
Well, we know that he's been preparing more than Donald Trump did. And actually, Tim Kaine himself has been off of the campaign trail for nearly a week. So kind of mirroring what Hillary Clinton did. He does have a home field advantage. He is from Richmond, Virginia, which is just about an hour away from here. In fact, we're told that he was prepping all weekend at the Wyndham in Richmond, just a few minutes from his home. So that helps psychologically. He knows Virginia. He knows Longwood University. He feels comfortable here, even though he did some of his debate prep in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's not surprising. That's something that candidates often do. They'll go and do debate prep in a battleground state just to kind of put their stamp down and say, you know, been here, done that. I chose to come here. Mike Pence did something similar, heading to Wisconsin to do debate prep.
And Mike Pence really does want to be the policy springboard for the Trump campaign. Fill in all the policy blanks that Donald Trump didn't prepare for and didn't have readily available in the first debate. So Trump supporters can say, yeah, that's why we're with them. And those who are still sort of gauging their level of interest and wondering what the policies a Trump-Pence presidency and vice presidency would bring to the country would actually look like. And Pence is very good at that. He's very well versed in conservative policy and familiar with most of the think tanks that have poured most of the policy that now is Trump policy into the campaign. So he really does want to be this person tonight who I think, and if you want to have a drinking game, Mike Pence might say, well, so Kaine comes out with a criticism about Muslim ban, something dealing with women, some other nasty thing that Trump has said. Mike Pence says something, well, yes, okay, but what's really important is this, and then honing in on policies that he will say are much more responsive to the needs for change or the desire for change in the electorate, creating more jobs, rebalancing things on trade, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think Pence comes into it with a desire to be the policy person that Donald Trump manifestly was not in that first debate.
And I think for that reason, you're actually going to see a more substantive debate about policy than we saw in the first debate. I can envision these two having a much more detailed conversation about immigration, about entitlements, about trade than we saw in the first debate when, you know, it was much more attack and parry.
It's interesting. A lot of Americans say they don't know these candidates that well. One of the things that I find really interesting is that they're both very religious. Tim Kaine is a staunch Catholic. Mike Pence started out as a Catholic, became a born-again Christian. Tim Kaine has said that he rejects abortion on his faith alone, but that he doesn't believe that the government should have a role in that. I'm curious, Major and Nancy, how that dynamic, that religious background with these two candidates will play in a question, for example, like abortion.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Mike Pence goes down this. Some very conservative Catholic groups have been very critical of Tim Kaine's Catholicism. Tim Kaine likes to talk about being a missionary in Honduras. There are some conservative Catholics who said, yeah, well, he's then and subsequently embraced liberation theology. He's kind of like a Marxist Catholic, trying to give him this taint of mid-'80s liberation theology and pseudo-Marxism wrapped around his Catholic faith. And they also question his pro-life credentials. Lack of full-blown support
from he was also for the death penalty. I mean, he was against the death penalty as a young attorney, and then as governor, there were 6 people executed under his watch. I mean, do voters really, are they the people that matter most now? Not the base, the people that matter most. Do these issues really count now?
Well, clearly, I would say the answer to your question simply is no. These are base voter mobilization tactics and questions being raised. And Kaine, I think, has some vulnerability on the pro-life question. Mike Pence is, I think, going to drive at that a little bit tonight in this debate. And as far as their religious perspective in politics, both will say it's a motivation, it's a grounding mechanism for them. They'll probably draw on that question, but where, as Nancy indicated, moves into policy, there'll be some sharper points made.
But, you know, both of them have won on a statewide level. They have both won their governor's races, which shows that they know how to appeal to both sides, especially Tim Kaine here in Virginia, which is kind of, you know, your ultimate battleground state. You can't be too far to the left or right and win a governor's race here in Virginia. So he's pretty skilled at threading the needle and saying what he needs to say to win over independents.
And I think that it's an interesting point, Major, you were sort of alluding to it earlier, which is that part of what these men are supposed to do tonight is to get the other candidate to say, yeah, but I disagree with Donald Trump, for example, on the ban on Muslims. I disagree with Hillary Clinton on the use of authorization force. That's sort of the game that we're going to see tonight, right?
Sure. It is to get them as far away, or if they can get them far away from the platform and the previous history of the nominee, the person at the top of the ticket. Let's not kid ourselves. This race is about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And only at the margins are Tim Kaine and Mike Pence going to enlarge that conversation. They want to drive home a few points, mobilize their base, because they're going to be the ones watching primarily tonight. This is not a mass audience event of the kind we saw at the first debate. There's not going to be 80 million people watching this debate, not even close. So at the margins, they're going to try to influence this debate. And if they can, as Nancy has said many times on CBSN, drive a wedge between the nominee that they're running with, they will. That's why I think you're going to hear Pence say a lot, well, yeah, that, but this.
Right.
Yes, but this. Yes, but this.
One challenge
Build your drinking game around it.
One thing that's kind of
from Major Garrett.
challenging for Tim Kaine is that on one hand, the Clinton campaign has been signaling that they are going to try to do what Major just said, which is drive a wedge between these two candidates, because Mike Pence has kept his distance from Donald Trump on a few issues. At the same time, they're trying to argue they're just the same, and that they're both extreme when it comes to women, when it comes to social issues. And so, you know, you can't make both arguments at the same time. You really have to pick one and stick with it, otherwise your message gets muddled. And it has been a little bit muddled going into this debate. One interesting thing about both of these men is how quickly they got comfortable with that second banana role. They have both been governors where you are in charge, you are the man. And yet from day one, they really both understood that their role was, you know, to let the top of the ticket shine.
They not only got the memo, they wrote the memo.
There you go. I want to ask you guys, though, before you go, who are we talking about now? There's the base, and then there are the undecided voters. But it's not really the undecided, is it? Who are we talking about that they need to win over tonight?
Well, look, at the vice presidential level, as I said a moment ago, you are not going to drive, there's not going to be a pendulum swing of 5 or 6 points based on this debate. You're really at the incremental level. Reassure those who are gravitating toward Hillary Clinton. Let's say you're a suburban voter in Montgomery County, just outside of Philadelphia. Does what Tim Kaine say reinforce this kind of good vibe you picked up from Hillary Clinton? If you're an undecided Republican, does Mike Pence say something to you that's like, Donald Trump isn't this anathema you think he is, or you've been told he is, or you might be afraid that he is? But really it's at the margins. It's not going to be a moment in which, unlike the polling data we've seen since the first debate, you're going to see a 5 or 6 point movement. You're just not.
Very specifically, they are looking to win over a sliver of suburban women in some of these battleground states who maybe identify as Republican, but perhaps they liked Barack Obama, voted for him 8 years ago. Now, they like that Trump is going to bring change to the system, but they worry about some of the things that he says, and so they've gone back and forth. Those are the voters that both camps are trying to fight over right now. That's why you heard Hillary Clinton bring up Alicia Machado in that first debate, and that's why I think you'll hear Tim Kaine talk a lot about women tonight.
Should be very exciting. It happens just a couple of hours. Nancy Cordes and Major Garrett, thank you both very much. Appreciate it for your time.